Good afternoon, everyone. Hope everybody's having a good day. Our class attendance will be a little lower than normal today. The Suicide Prevention Club on at Bluefield is having some kind of guest speaker right now. So, um, yeah, we have diminished numbers, but nonetheless, it should be a really interesting, spirited discussion today. This is probably the hardest day of this class to teach from my just from my perspective. um, these you guys know these are topics that everybody gets very emotional about. Everybody kind of has their opinion about the topics before you even read them. kind of the I'm also very, let's see, Jordan's not here today, so let's see, I'm just surveying the list here. So it also takes the added dimension of me being a man teaching a class full of all women today about abortion. Okay, so that's not uncomfortable at all. Okay, yeah. So I will approach the subject from sort of a bird's eye view of both perspectives, and as well as looking at IVF today. And like, so we're going to start off with just some context and like sort of outlining of arguments. Then we'll kind of see what we think of said arguments. Okay. So let's start with, let's see, where to. Let's start first with the topic of abortion. Okay. This is, of course, the hot issue. This is what gets everybody riled up. Lots of people will go to the poll and vote just based on this issue alone. Okay. Like, I know that, especially in the Catholic population, a lot of Catholics will go and vote for a certain party just because um, certain candidates will go pro life. I'm not one such Catholic. I think it's a lot more complicated than that. But for most people, this is the hot defining issue that defines everything about who they are as a political animal. Okay. So let's start first by the religious argument is one thing. Let's start first by sort of outlining out the most famous sort of philosophical and secular argument in favor of pro choice. Okay, this is the argument in favor of pro choice. This, this is outlined in the Mary Warren reading that I gave you for today. So basically the gist of this is it's a thought experiment. Okay. So the thought experiment is imagine you are a person, it doesn't have to be a man or a woman in this case. Both can relate to this thought experiment. But imagine being a person, you're kidnapped, you're taken against your will, you're knocked out. Okay. You wake up one day, you are strapped to an IV connected to another person. Okay, you're connected to another person. This famous person is a famous violinist, according to the thought experiment. Okay, world known famous violinist. I don't know why they made him a violinist, but such as the thought experiment. Okay, but the idea here is if this person has kidney failure, okay, so this person is going to die without some help. You are the only person just for the sake of the thought experiment, okay? You are the only person who can help this person. The idea is here, and if you stay on an IV, you donate 9 months of your life being on an IV to help this person restore their kidney function. Okay, eventually that person will recover, and then you can be on your way. Okay, you can then kind of go do what you go live your life at this point. But you got to donate a whole 9 months of your life to doing this. This raises several questions about moral culpability. Okay, so are you morally culpable for this random violinist? Like, if you would try to escape, get the heck out of Dodge, would you at that point be a murderer, right, for doing that? Would this raises lots of questions. Would you feel obligated to sit there that whole 9 months to help out this violinist? Or would you sort of try to escape and get out of there? Maybe you have a choice, like maybe you're not being held against your will. You can choose whether to stay or walk out. But either way, if you walk out, this person's going to die. Okay. So let me just ask you guys collectively as a class, in this thought experiment, would you donate 9 months of your life to helping out this violinist, to help him survive? You can't move. You got to stay there in the bedridden, hooked up to an IV to help this guy out. Would you feel obligated to do it, or would you say, hell no, right? I'm getting out of here? What would you do? This isn't really a trick question, okay? I'm guessing most of you would say, hell no, right? I'm not staying. Am I right in my assumption? Yeah. Go ahead, Tana. Tell me what you're thinking.
I personally, I don't think I would stay for the 9 months. I guess I don't really have a reason. I guess I don't think I would. I don't think.
9 months is a long time, right?
Yeah. In that same area for that long with that person, that's a long time. Like you have to be very committed every day.
Yeah, you have no like moral, no emotional attachment to this person. Like, you're
Mm-mm.
not going to even be able to talk to the person because he's unconscious.
Right. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I wouldn't.
what about some of the rest of y'all? Help the guy or no?
I
What do
feel
you?
the same way she does, actually.
Why so, Emily?
Just because it's like you don't know the person. It'd be one thing if I did know the person, but it would be another if I didn't. I don't know. I wouldn't feel comfortable doing that.
Okay.
I wouldn't be able to take myself away from my family for that period of time. I don't think. I mean, unless they could come over to the house, then we could both be stuck as long as I could be with the kids.
Yeah, you can get him in a little hospital bed, wheel him around your house, right? While you do your thing. You guys can place a Walmart delivery order. Right? Make sure the groceries are delivered. Okay, it's like living in COVID times all over again. What would you do, Allison?
I think I'm the opposite of everybody else. I think I would.
Oh, why so?
I don't know. I wouldn't be able to walk away knowing that I could help somebody who, like, if I didn't, they're absolutely gonna die. I don't know. That would break my heart.
Right.
And like, yes, 9 months is a long time, and that would suck. That would suck really bad. But like, give away 9 months of my time for them to live another 30 years or something, I feel like that would be worth it. Even though I don't know them. It would be a really hard thing, but that's what I think I would do.
Okay, good. You're a noble person, Alice. You're more noble than I would be. I don't think I would say yes to such a situation. Others of you, feel free to chime in.
I don't think I could. That's just too long to not know anybody.
Yeah, if you did have to put a time on it, what would you say would be acceptable?
Like a month or so.
Yeah, I'm good for a month, but after that, no more. Think how long it takes for a year to pass by. Right? Sometimes it feels like it takes longer than others. I imagine time is relative, right? I imagine that would make the year feel like it's going by like a slug as far as that goes. Anybody else agree with Allison and would say yes, you would help the guy? I'm going to call on you, Lauren. We had some interesting discussions the other day. What do you think?
I don't think I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna be so honest. It would be different if it was 1 month. It'd even be different if it was 9 weeks. But 9 months, I probably wouldn't be able to do it. I would like to say that I'm caring enough to do something like that, but no, I just know deep down I probably would not do that.
Right, so you two are a solid no on this one.
Yeah, like
I feel,
I think I'd be lying if I said that I would do it.
I feel like it would be different if it was like another person that you can like swap out and then they do this amount of time and then you do this amount of time. Then maybe I would. But if it's just by myself, I don't think I could do it.
I agree with what she said.
Right, yeah, that's quite a responsibility to shoulder on just one person. The thought that you're the only person in the world who can help preserve this person's life. I hope you guys see where this is going, okay? And that is Warren is trying to make this thought experiment as an analogy into talking about abortion. Okay, so Allison was giving us some pro-life arguments the other day, so she didn't fall for the mousetrap here. Okay, so what Warren is trying to do, she's pretty much, or what Thompson, the original ethicist, is trying to do. She's creating a mousetrap here. Right? She says if you're truly pro-life, practice what you preach. Okay, practice what you preach. If you were truly pro-life, you would do everything that you can to help this person, this violinist, survive. Okay, you would do everything you could. And the analogy here to kind of unpack it, carrying a child for 9 months in the womb is pretty much just like this, according to her. Right? Like, you don't yet, maybe, I mean, there's arguments to be made that you do have a relationship with a child who you're pregnant with. Right? You feel that kinship already, that special bond. She's saying here, you don't know this person yet. It's like this. It's almost like this little alien, right? Who is kind of like latching on to you for survival. Like, think about it. It's almost kind of suggesting that it's a parasitical sort of relationship. You have somebody kind of leeching off of you It's your responsibility to keep them going for 9 months. This idea is just pretty much saying, aha, right? Most of you wouldn't agree to this. Therefore, you're not really pro-life. You're not really what you preach here in this circumstance. And we can certainly unpack that. What do you guys think of this as an analogy? Do you think this analogy works, or is this kind of like twisting this into a certain perspective, right? I guess Thompson's sort of trying to be too clever here with having like an aha moment. Does this analogy of this random person being connected to you with an IV, is that really analogous to talking about nurturing a child for 9 months in the womb? I would hope not, right? I would hope not. Yeah. So the difference being here, like, if you're a mother nurturing a child alone, right, you do have that relationship. So that's kind of where the analogy maybe falls a little short. Like, otherwise, why would people grieve whenever they had to have like a miscarriage or something, right? Because they have that relationship already, even if you haven't already met the person yet. So this is her mousetrap, though. And I don't know how many of you in here would identify as being pro-life. But if you identify as pro-life and then you said, I would leave, Thompson's pretty much saying here, aha, are you really pro-life? Right? You're prizing your own bodily autonomy over this other being. I think that's kind of what she is suggesting. So now that this is all established, what do you guys think of this argument as a whole? You think it works? Is it weak in some way? What about you? You were the only person that didn't fall for it, Allison. What do you think here?
I would say that it's weak because, like, if you're carrying a baby, you're not exactly, like, you're not giving up 9 months of your life. Even though, like, I would agree to do it, I would say it's different because, like, you're pregnant, but you're not stuck in bed in, like, a room attached to an IV to a person, and you have, like, you do have a relationship with the baby that you're growing. And I don't know, I mean, I've never had a baby, so I wouldn't know, but I would imagine that would be really, like, really, really different.
The argument is definitely not the same.
Yeah, you want to elaborate, Mandy?
Yeah, it's just like she said, you're still living. I mean, yes, it's 9 months, but you're still living, and it's different. I mean, you're connected. That child's inside of you. I don't know. It's just a completely different argument than somebody I don't even know. I've never known them, and I have to eliminate living for 9 months. It's different.
Right.
I feel like that it could depend on like the person and where they are in their life and like basically where they're at in life. It just depends.
Zuri, are you talking about the argument about being connected?
Yeah. It could really just depend on the person and where they are in life.
Yeah, maybe if they would offer to pay you, right? Like let's say you were unemployed or something, right? They offered to pay you for 9 months. So,
Yeah.
sure, I'll keep him alive then. Yeah, I think you guys are hitting a tension point here that you're not. It's not like you're stuck in one room for 9 months if you're pregnant. Right? You can live your own life and do your own thing. It might be a little harder for a while, right, with morning sickness and such, but doesn't stop you from living your life. So whenever we think of something like abortion, and especially the argument about stuff like rape and incest, okay. So if you, Lauren and I were talking about this after class the other day, I think, like if you did not have any choice, right, in getting pregnant, like let's say you were raped, okay, and you didn't have any choice, um, would this analogy of being connected to a person work, especially in that circumstance? Arguably, maybe more so, right? Because you didn't have free will in creating this life. So why? That's the big difference. Because if you have a child and you want it, you had sexual relations, right, and you want it, that's one thing. But if you were forced against your will, or you were just like a younger, like let's say you were barely past puberty and you got molested or something, would you owe a responsibility to that life then? Um, it gets a little murkier at that point. Um,
I'm gonna say no because I don't like. I get that some people would keep it and things, but I can understand how some people wouldn't want to live with that or live with the reminder of that.
mhm.
So I can understand.
Yeah, the Catholic Church at least teaches that in those kinds of situations, you should still at least go through with the pregnancy and then give it up for adoption or something. That's kind of what they suggest. Um, I'm, even though I'm a pretty devout Catholic myself, I'm very conflicted on that. Like, I'm just not comfortable demanding that somebody do that. Um, that's just how I feel. Okay. I get the absolute moral stance that the church is putting out there, right? But at the same time, I just don't know if I could look somewhat. If I was a doctor and I had a patient, let's say I was a gynecologist and I had a patient who was going through that, I don't know. I don't know if I would have the volition to tell them to keep it. Um, maybe I'm a very liberal Catholic. I don't know. That's just kind of how I roll. It's very, very touchy stuff, right? Like, which I should also mention the article that I gave you about ectopic pregnancies, okay? Because this abortion gets a little murkier when it comes to this subject. So, this article that I gave you talked about in Texas and West Virginia has just passed very similar laws. Okay, and let's see. in this Texas hospital, it says 2 women were denied to have an abortion for an ectopic pregnancy. Basically, I mean, I don't have to give you all an anatomy lesson here on what happens, right? But you have an egg that is fertilized, it's going through the fallopian tubes, but then it gets stuck. Okay, it's a life. If you don't have an abortion in that case, it could perhaps kill you, right? You could get sepsis and die. What do you do in that circumstance, right? I think this is kind of where we start bringing utilitarianism into the argument. What is the greater good here? If you don't have the abortion, then you run the risk of both the mother and the fetus dying, right? If you do go through with the abortion, of course, the fetus will die, but the mother will at least live, right, and have a choice. So what is the greater good in that scenario? It's a very difficult scenario. Certain states like Texas and now even West Virginia are pretty much taking away bodily autonomy in these kinds of circumstances, right? The abortion is not allowed under any circumstance, even a circumstance like that. You guys tell me what you think. I don't want to be the man lecturing a bunch of women on this topic. Okay, you guys tell me what's your stance on this one.
If it comes to an ectopic pregnancy, then yes, I would 100% be like, get that abortion to save yourself. But I'm also 50-50 when it comes to abortion because I don't like the thought of it. For me, like, I think it's morally wrong. But in medical situations, yes. Like, hands down. So that's how I feel about it. Especially reading that article, it's like they were denied it and they had to go and sue the hospital. Like, who wants to sue a hospital just because you're being denied an abortion? I'm pretty sure not a whole lot of people, but when you have no choice, it's like, what else can you do?
Are you talking, Mandy? If you are, you're muted.
I do that all the time. The suing thing with the hospital, that's a whole other ethical thing. I have a huge issue with that. The only time I could see that being warranted is intentional negligence. Like Dr. Yeager knew that they were dying and he was just drinking his coffee and didn't care. You know what I mean? Because there's no amount of money that's going to change that. Like suing anyone, a hospital on a mistake or anything like that is ridiculous anyway. But as far as that topic, if I died with an ectopic pregnancy, then I would die. I think that it's me playing God trying to alter that. I don't know. If it's my time to go, it's just my time to go. And if you told me, that's like, there are children that are like, they say they're not going to make it to term, but they do. Or newborn babies, and the doctors say they're not going to make it past 6 weeks and they're 6 years old. Just because a doctor would tell me that it was going to be a certain way, I would not be able to change my own moral mind frame because of what they said. I think that's where my faith comes in, where it's what I believe. And if it's my time to go and that's how it worked, then that's how it would go. But I wouldn't be able to live with myself after the fact. I would live the rest of my days saying, what if?
Yeah, that's a very noble stance, Mandy. That takes it's almost Kantian, right, in your ethics there. This just to kind of walk you guys through this particular story. just to summarize it, it says after a month of cramps, dizziness, and nonstop bleeding, Thurman sought help from her OBGYN, who suspected she had an ectopic pregnancy and recommended methotrexate to terminate it. It says she lived 60 miles northwest of Austin, drove an hour away for treatment at Round Rock, Texas. The complaint said doctors found signs of a tubal ectopic pregnancy, but discharged her and encouraged her to return in 2 days. She returned. She was not offered treatment. It took Thurman's OBGYN driving to the hospital to plead with medical staff for Thurman to be given methotrexate as treatment. It was too late, her attorney said. The ectopic pregnancy ruptured days later, leaving her bleeding heavily and in blinding pain. Doctors removed her right fallopian tube to save her life, effectively lowering her chance of having a successful pregnancy in the future. So basically, this woman was denied care for these, because of these laws. She was denied care. Denying her care then turned, the argument is denying her care then turned into criminal negligence, causing her to lose her right fallopian tube. And so that drastically diminishes your chance of getting pregnant with you just have one fallopian tube. Okay. So in this circumstance, with this story in mind, would you guys say that you're going to be future medical professionals? You know this stuff. Would you say that this is criminal negligence in this case to not treat accordingly?
I say it is, yes. Like, just mainly because, like, it's your responsibility to take care of that patient. And if you just brush it off like it's nothing and that person loses their life, you should be held responsible. Like, that's just how it should be.
Others of you, thoughts?
Yeah, the doctor knew the risk they were taking by denying her care. I mean, they had to know as good as anyone the chance of her becoming septic. So, and I'm not trying to make this a thing, but I am curious. Because I think it does make a difference. Do we know for sure if the doctor was male or female?
Let me see. I want to check. This particular article doesn't say. Yeah, I would have to do a little more digging. This particular article is very vague. It uses doctor in the plural to not be gender specific. I'd say that was probably done on purpose. Okay, just thinking about how journalists operate. If it was a male doctor making this decision, right? Is that where you're going, Hannah? You would raise an eyebrow at that point?
Yeah. Because, I mean, we hear stories of women all the time deciding they've wanted to get their tubes tied, and they go to a male doctor, and he's like, well, why don't we think about it and wait? And they're 100% sure they don't want to have a baby. I don't know. I just think it does make a difference.
Oftentimes they'll say, what would your husband think about that? Your husband.
Yes, or I've heard in some cases I don't know how true this is, but sometimes a husband's signature is required, I've heard, which I think is, I don't know, not totally ridiculous, but she's a woman who can make her own decision. We're going to assume at that point that he's probably in support of the decision.
Yeah, I've heard very similar stories that you had both parties have to sign off. And if you're unmarried, then they're even more hesitant to do it. What if you get married in the future and you want to have one? You'll regret it then. That's kind of the rhetoric that is given. It's almost like they're infantilizing you by saying that, right? Like you're incapable of making your own call.
Yeah. And I personally don't want kids, ever. So, and all I hear is, well, who's going to take care of you when you're older? What if you meet the one and you change your mind? I don't know. That might happen, but, today I'm very certain I don't want them. I'm capable of making that decision and being sure of it,
Yeah, I wonder if there's female doctors who give that kind of rhetoric too. Like, what if you change your mind one day? If this is just a man doctor thing, I would be curious. And it's again, as far as my own thinking goes, I'm not comfortable telling somebody that they can't have one in that circumstance. Yeah, and I now have a master's degree in Catholic bioethics. Okay, I don't think I would be comfortable doing that. So I probably go against the teachings of my own faith here. I just don't think I could do it. Again, a complicated issue. This is hopefully you guys are seeing that we're discussing this in a pretty objective way. But let's kind of segue over now into talking about the other big one that I wanted to discuss today, which is IVF. Okay, IVF, in vitro fertilization. Okay, this is one that I personally do have some pretty strong opinions about as a bioethicist. Okay, for one of the biggest contradictions that we often see in our political culture now, and I'll admit here, I'm being straight and frank with you guys. I have a very opinionated opinion on this one. Okay, but one of the biggest contradictions in our culture today is you oftentimes hear people say, even politicians say, I'm pro-life, but then the same politician will say, I support IVF. Okay, how can you be pro-life and support IVF? Those are two very contradictory statements. Okay, and I will explain why as I kind of walk you through a little bit of it. This is one that I imagine if you're going to be a rad tech, this is one that you guys might be confronted with in your own practice at some point. So it's worth investigating further. So let me just kind of pull my slides up here. So you guys read the Dignitas Personae article. That was a article straight from the Catholic Church, the Magisterium. But it basically goes over this argument. As a human being, you have dignity, you have worth as a human being. From the very moment you're conceived to the moment you die, you have dignity. And of course, according to this theory of moral status that we're operating within here, at that moment of conception, it's a full human being. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, some of the reasons that the church teaches for the dignity of the human being. when I say CCC, that's the Catechism of the Catholic Church. Okay, that's what that source is. But it says, pretty much says, man is created in the image of God. Man has freedom and free will. And the divine image of God is present in every person. So within this kind of framework, it doesn't matter if you're rich, it doesn't matter if you're poor, it doesn't matter what the color of your skin is, it doesn't matter what your immigration status is. This is something, I don't know if you guys have been following the news, this is something that is in our news cycle right now. The Pope and Trump are into it over immigration. Okay. It doesn't matter what your status is, you have dignity because you're a God created creature. Okay. So when it comes to IVF, let's kind of unpack this a little bit. I'm going to kind of skip around in these slides. IVF is, of course, whenever you fertilize an egg in a laboratory. Right? Maybe you get a sperm sample or whatever. You fertilize the egg in the laboratory, and then you implant. It's usually like 12 or 13 days after the embryo develops for a little bit, after 12 or 13 days. Why is it 12 or 13 days? I actually saw this road sign once that said something like, it was a pro-life road sign, but it says after 12 or 13 days after conception, that's when a heartbeat starts. Okay. That's kind of that human properties view of moral status. Right? Maybe once you start getting a heartbeat, that's when that thing becomes a human being. But it's around that time when they implant the egg. Okay, you can kind of see here. This is a picture of a petri dish where they have an embryo. It's very sterile, very just very sterile. It kind of gives you the feeling of like you're in a hospital or something. It doesn't seem like this is the most ideal way to have a child. Okay. Let's see. One of the biggest aspects of this problem is lots of people think with this topic that they just take one embryo, that they just have one embryo that they're working with at any one given time. That is not true. What happens is you will get all these different embryos. Doctors will take way more than one at once. Okay. You take a bunch of embryos, and this procedure fails all the time. Take a bunch of embryos, she puts a bunch of them in the freezer pretty much. They stay in this kind of state of frozenness in the freezer. Lots of times they don't live, they don't survive. The embryo doesn't survive in the freezer. But you take more than one at once, store the rest. Well, what happens then to that embryo? If you don't think that the embryo is full human life yet, maybe that's not so bad, right? Like it's just a fertilized egg. There's no human properties to it yet. If you think that embryo is a fully fledged human being from the moment of conception, well, you're putting a full human being in the freezer, cryogenically freezing them. That new embryo may or may not make it. Right? You can die in the freezer. It may stay in the freezer forever and never be actualized into a full human being. It's a very wasteful process. And again, this kind of depends. I'm trying to remain as objective as I can here, but this kind of depends on Are you sort of Kantian in your ethics, or are you utilitarian in your ethics here? What is the greater good? One of the reason why people get IVF is, of course, is because infertility is a major concern. And I'll just be frank with you guys here. This is something that affects my wife and I. Okay, she has PCOS. It makes it darn near impossible. She has it so bad to the point that it's going to be darn near impossible for her to ever get pregnant. And it's a very much a hard thing within our marriage, okay, because she wants to have one so bad, but if she ever does have one, it'll be a miracle, okay? We'll just say that. Well, for people like that who really want to have a child, IVF is usually the first thing that a gynecologist will suggest. And for people like me, that's kind of a non-starter, right? Because think about all these embryos that don't make it because they're stuck in a freezer. But you have to kind of ask yourself, what is the greater good here? Is the greater good a few embryos might die so that one human being could come to be? Maybe that wouldn't have come to be otherwise. Is that fully fledged human being's life worth more than that embryo who died in a freezer? It's a tough one. Okay. If you, depending on what view of moral status you have, can radically change how you think about that topic. That's why we looked at moral status as our framework the other day. But some of the things that the church mentions here as their argument is that, let's see, one of the things they mention is creating a human being in a test tube is just kind of weird and icky, okay, for lack of a better word. It's weird and icky. Whenever the ideal way of reproduction is, of course, to have relations with your, in the church's view at least, your person you're married to, and you have the child out of love. It's a loving act to get pregnant the natural way. If you go through this sort of sterile test tube way, it kind of diminishes the whole dignity of the act of creation, of reproduction. That's one premise to the argument. Another aspect here, think about all the different parties involved. Who could this affect? For the mother, lots of times these reproductive technologies can pose a health risk. For somebody like, just to take like my wife, for instance, people who really want to have children and can't are very vulnerable. So whenever a process like IVF costs tens of thousands of dollars, and it's usually not covered by insurance, the church argues this kind of leaves these vulnerable want to be mothers open to exploitation. And then also argues that being a mother, which is a sacred bond between mother and child, is reduced to a mere mechanical function. Likewise, for talking about the father here, like the church argues that the father is, I wouldn't say more, just as important as the mother in this equation, but the father's rights should be taken into consideration too. And It says removing the father from the act of procreation diminishes the importance of the father in the reproductive act. And it also treats sperm like a commodity. One of the things with IVF is I oftentimes like to compare this to a Build-A-Bear. Okay, think about it. You go to a Build-A-Bear, you design the traits that you want your child to have, or you want the bear to have. Likewise, in IVF, you might get a sperm from your husband or whatever, but oftentimes it gives you lots of choices. Like this sample comes from a 6'6", very healthy, very muscular guy, right? He's not too bright though. This sperm sample comes from a neurosurgeon, right? So it almost kind of makes you think of it in terms of commodification, like the male in this case becomes a commodity. And the church, another aspect of the church's argument to this one, no one has a right to a child. Like lots of times people will say they have a right to have a child. And the church argues that is not the case. A child is not property. What the church kind of suggests here is, why would you go to all of this trouble to get pregnant this way, when think about all the hundreds of thousands of children who are out there who need to have a home, who need to be adopted. The more noble thing to do, the church argues, is to adopt. Sort of take up, they use the language, take up your cross. Take up your cross, realize it's never going to happen for you naturally. Adopt and love a child that way that needs to be loved. So that's kind of the other aspect to this. There's different types of IVF. The heterologous, the conception comes from that sperm donation from someone other than the partner. The homologous IVF, you conceive a child with one spouse through artificial means. So IVF is very much popular, especially with like lesbian couples, for instance. If you're a lesbian couple, you want to have a child, this is a way that you can get pregnant. Okay. Let's see. I already kind of mentioned some of these other arguments. This in a nutshell is their argument. The church. The church is the one that has the big stance here. Okay. Well, you can also play fair here and raise the counter argument. You can make the case that the greater good comes from that parent having that child. That sort of heals that lack in their heart, right? If they want to be a parent. If we have the technology, why not do it? Okay. There's also, of course, the argument, we've already done it so much. Like it's brought, you can say that it has brought good to the world. Hundreds of thousands of people at this point have been born from IVF. Okay, hundreds of thousands. So think about all the contributions those people have made to our world. Just because you're born from IVF doesn't mean you're any less human than any of the rest of us. This kind of goes, I'm looking at Allison here because Allison and I studied here in the semester, right? The Frankenstein's creature wasn't born naturally. but nonetheless, he seems human, right? So it's also kind of a case of, hey, mind your own business here. Like, this is a private matter, usually. If we think that this is best for our family to go through with this procedure, who's this? This is where we get the moral relativism. Okay, if I think it's okay for my family to go through this procedure, you think it's wrong. Well, who's to say I'm right? Who's to say you're right? Right? We all come to this opinions in different ways. So, that's kind of outlining a contrary stance here for why IVF might be supported. But my point being here is, no matter what stance you take on the topic, you can't say that you are truly pro-life if you also support IVF, okay? Because arguably you take more lives than you bring into the world by going through this process. Okay, so that's the argument. Depends what your definition of a human life is, what theory of moral status you have. So, again, I gave you my opinion, but I gave you the other opinion. So I'd like to think I'm pretty objective in my approach here, right? What do you all think of this one? I don't know if any of you have any personal thoughts on this one. Like, would you go through with this if you faced infertility? Or of people who have gone through this? I don't know. What stories or thoughts you guys have?
I don't know anybody personally that's been through it, but I don't really see a problem with it. I mean, yeah, there's adoption. People could adopt, but adoption is always a process.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, some people might feel more of a connection to a child that they share genetics with,
Yep.
I don't think everybody thinks that way, but I just know that's how some people would feel, and I don't really see anything wrong with it, to be honest. I don't think it disrupts like human life or anything. I don't really think it's that big of a deal. I think if somebody would like to do that and has the choice to do that, then
Yeah, very well said, Lauren. I thought, Mandy, I saw you unmute there. Maybe she did it accidentally.
I was going to say, I don't see a problem with it either. I do know somebody that has went through it. She couldn't, get pregnant for about 3 years, and she finally took that step for the IVF. And she did, have a couple of them to fail, and it's a long process. And she went through a lot, with sticking herself and pretty much every day. So, I mean, it's a lot on your body as well, but if that's the only step for you to take to be able to have a baby, then I don't see anything wrong with it either. But I definitely think, for people that can't have one, I think it is ideal that they go through IVF, or even IUI as well.
also following what Tina said, like, I understand that, like, I saw a popular argument that IVF is wrong because there's a higher chance for the children to have cancer. Like, a way higher chance. But there's always a chance, there's always going to be a chance of that anyway. You go out in the sun, you don't have sunscreen on, there's a chance of getting it. There's always a chance of a child having cancer, and I don't think that should stop somebody. Because if they really want a child that badly, anyone with their own genetics, they're most likely going to be a good parent and care for them regardless if they have cancer or have something wrong with them anyway. And usually we'll have the abilities to take care of them if they did have that. So I still feel like they should still have the choice to have it.
Yeah, I haven't heard the cancer statistic, Lauren. I haven't heard that.
Well, I'm not too sure what the statistic is, but honestly, mine was kind of like it was kind of an assumption because I saw somebody talk about it being wrong because of that on like TikTok, and I also seen like some kid. They was like, "Oh, this child is the first child with IVF to beat cancer," so I assume it's a common thing, like a common correlation, but I'm not too sure.
I've not heard that either. And I know you can argue that, especially for women, and the only thing they want to do is be a parent and arguing. There, as I've birthed children and I've adopted children, and I can hands down tell you that it is not accurate that you will feel differently towards adopted children. I have adopted kids that are closer to me than birth kids, and some of them I'm more alike. So there's no guarantee on that. Foster kids or adopted kids, the mindset of statistically them being in trouble, so can your birth kids, they can too. So ethically, as far as them being a difference, but there is a difference as far as the woman being able to carry a child, being able to nurse that baby, carry that child, feel that baby move. And I think that's what drives a lot of women. And so, I mean, I personally would stand stronger on abortion than I would be ways of trying to get pregnant. Although I would not. I personally would not. There's so many children that need a home. I would not go through those steps for me personally, but I have more of an understanding about that than I do than abortion.
Yeah, the kind of build on what you two just said. Another argument could be made that for the anti-IVF side, at least, that going through this process is so sort of scientific and sterile almost that you lack that personal connection to the child then, right? Because you didn't have the child through natural reproduction, right? So it almost becomes it becomes something unnatural at that point. It causes you to lose a connection in that way. Again, I haven't gone through it. I don't know, but that's nonetheless a counter argument. So we got Lauren's stance and we got Mandy's stance and Tana's. What about some of the rest of y'all? Have you know anybody who's gone through it? Would you get it yourself if you had to? Go ahead, Zuri. I see you nodding. Tell me what you're thinking. Well, I also see some knowing nods from you up there, Allison. What's your stance on this one? You agree with the Catholics?
Well, see, this one makes it so much more complicated because I want to say I'm 100% pro-life, but you said you can't be pro-life and pro-IVF. And so I didn't know that much stuff about IVF, and now that I do, it's really hard for me to give an answer because I know how hard it would be to be in that situation where you can't get pregnant and you want to carry your own child. Because, like, for me, that's like one of my biggest desires. Like 4 years down the road, yes, I want to have a baby and I want to carry my own baby. But I have PCOS as well. So, like, if that was a problem for me, I feel like I would maybe be open to the idea just because I have that, like, that's a really huge desire of mine. But also, I really do see the opposing side too. So it's different, like, when you think about it, like, on a personal level. So that would be something I would have to really, really pray about and really consider. That's something I don't think I could give a true answer of what I would do or not right now because before this lecture I didn't know that much stuff about IVF and now I do. So I think maybe my opinion would change, but I don't know.
What about it in particular is new after the lecture?
That some of the fertilized embryos get thrown away.
Mm-hmm.
I did not know that. And that doesn't sit right with me because I'm pro-life from moment of conception. So if you put that standard on abortion, you kind of have to put that standard on IVF. You can't, it's not right to put it on one and not the other. So that's something I would really have to consider.
so.
Yeah, because that's something I didn't know. So that's something that would have to be added.
Actually, I agree with Allison. I think it's funny though because we have like opposite viewpoints, but we still agree on the same things. Because I've always been pro-choice, but I did for a while think IVF was kind of messed up because I did know about the throwing away eggs thing, and I was like, the adoption system is there's so many kids in the adoption system. Like, I feel like it's kind of messed up to go through IVF and there's not even a promise that you're gonna make through. So I used to think it was kind of messed up, but then I thought, because I also figured out I have PCOS as well, and I also figured out I feel like it's a selfish standpoint to think IVF is wrong sometimes because somebody's considering that choice. That's probably I don't know. Okay, so me and my boyfriend, I love him and I understand somebody wanting to see little mini versions of their partner running around. And I understand there's surrogacy and stuff like that too, but you would still want to see yourself mixed in with that. You know what I mean? So that's also why I could understand IVF as well. It's really difficult because I still think the adoption system has so many kids. It's kind of like with animals, for example. You would do adopt, don't shop, because there's so many kids in the adoption system or so many animals in the adoption system. I don't know. I think it's difficult.
Yeah, what you just said kind of makes me feel conflicted because that's something I felt conflicted about because my wife and I we bought a pug last year and we spent lots of money for that pug. It kind of makes you feel guilty, right, when you think about all those other animals that are in the animal shelter. And then you spend a bunch of money for a specific type of one. It's the same principle here. Maybe I'm a hypocrite here.
I've just came to terms with that I'm a hypocrite as well. So.
What about, we got just a couple minutes left. What do you guys make of the point about build a bear that I mentioned? Do you see that kind of leading to dangerous consequences, perhaps, if you kind of shop around for genetic traits for your offspring?
Now, that part of it I do disagree with. IVF, if you and your husband can't get pregnant and you want to have a baby, then if it's your egg and your husband's sperm, then I don't see anything. I think that's okay. But if you're gonna choose based off of other people's genetics and stuff, I don't think that's okay.
I agree with Allison.
Agreed.
But the difficult thing is that if I agree with that, but you can't pick or choose, it either exists or it doesn't. That's how I feel about abortion. I personally wouldn't get an abortion, but you can't be oh, well, I think abortion should only be okay in instances of rape or underage kids or poor people. If it has to exist or it can't, And even if it didn't exist and people will do it illegally, they'll find a way. And that's the only reason why, I'm at the end of the day, I feel like everybody should have their own choice because they're most likely going to find a way to do it anyway. So even though I don't, I agree with Allison, I don't think people should do IVF in that manner. I actually think that's a very weird way of thinking, especially for your own children, to try to pick their genes. But, you can't pick or choose, I guess. You can't be oh, this is allowed and this isn't when it comes to that.
Yeah, the possible consequences of this could be some Nazi shit, right? For lack of a better word, right? You have certain people who can afford to go through IVF, getting these children, and they're picking these genetic traits, right? They're picking superior traits. So will this kind of even create a class division that is built on genetics, right? There's a certain genetically superior group of people up top, while the rest of us are down here. That's some very that's a slippery slope to go down, but nonetheless, you can kind of see the logic of it. Um, yeah, so this is also one of the hot button issues of our time. That's why I wanted to spend some time talking about it. Okay. Hopefully you all got something out of it. Hopefully I did okay talking about these topics, even though I'm a man lecturing a whole class full of women. I don't have Jordan here today to give another masculine perspective. Okay. One thing I would like to touch on, maybe at the start of next class, is I'd like to talk a little bit about surrogacy. I just have to say about that. But next class, we are going to turn our attention to some end of life ethical topics. So we're going to look at euthanasia. We're going to look at the topic of brain death, like when do you pull the plug on someone. So we're going to look at some hairy stuff there next week as well. Okay, so we'll start next class talking about surrogacy, and we'll move into those other subjects. And I'll try to get those readings up for you soon. Also, of course, take a look at the paper. Let me just really quickly just kind of show it to you. I don't want to hold you guys past time. Let me just really quickly show it to you. The prompt is up, but basically this paper is going to be half a thought experiment and half of a paper. Okay, so taking all of these theories about moral status, I'm going to have you guys you can kind of take it, the check, the X, or it depends. But thinking about how each school would approach of moral status would approach this, like what would a view of human property say about conducting research on IVF? What would a view of future like ours have to say about it? Okay, so part of the goal of the assignment is to try to get you to think, how would all these different ethical schools approach this? But in your paper, you will be kind of making a case for your stance, what stance you have and why, while also kind of unpacking some things out of your chart. So I will also try to dedicate some time next week to really going into the nuts and bolts. But that's what you will be doing. 50 points of the paper will be based on the chart. The other 50 points will be based on the actual essay and the analysis. And the chart is kind of a you're right or you're wrong kind of thing for most of those. Some of them are kind of debatable, but for most of them, they have pretty clear-cut answers. Start thinking about it. How would each one of those schools of moral status we've talked about this week approach some of these problems we're discussing in class? Okay. All right, so you all have yourselves a great weekend. I'll see you guys next week.
Dr. Yeager,
Sure, Hannah.
is that paper due on the 8th?
Let me take a look. I'll probably have it due. I'm just going to change it right now. I'll probably have it due on the Monday instead of Friday the 8th. Monday, May 10th. How about Monday's better? Okay.
Okay.
I'll have plenty of things to grade that weekend, so it's not going to inconvenience me if you wait till Monday.
All right.
See?
Have a good evening.
Have a good one, Hannah. You got anything for me, Mandy, before I hang up? All right. We'll see you, Mandy.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too.